and how to lose, and how to choose.
Well, hello, this is Linda Carbonell, and welcome to another edition of Walking Through Life. Today I happen to have a guest from
Brattleboro, yes.
Brattleboro?
Yep.
So this is...
Malika.
Oh, I can't say that name, I don't know why.
Sometimes people remember it by Ilika Malika.
Okay, yeah. that would work. And your last name is Puffer?
Yes.
Yeah, I got that one right. And you work with HRS?
Yeah, I work for HCRS, managing peer support services.
Yep.
Yeah.
So what's some of the things that you do for peer support services?
Well, peer support means a lot of different things in a lot of different settings and to different people. For us, it means a few different things. Number one, and most importantly, it means that we are really trying to build relationships with people who want our support that are mutual and genuine. So really showing up as a whole person, maybe talking about any of our life experiences that relate to the person that we're supporting, and trying to not have a relationship that's like expert and client, but really like we're learning and growing together in a very mutual way. That's the goal. So that's one main aspect of what we do, and mainly that happens through responding to people's requests for our support. So we basically go where we are wanted. We aren't like part of people's treatment team. Another aspect of what we do is around advocacy. So advocating with people or for people for what they've expressed would be helpful to them. And then another part of our role, and this is a lot of what takes up my time personally, is about systems change and culture change, and kind of somewhat exposing people to like other options and frameworks for viewing the experiences that we call mental illness, and kind of, I guess, promoting a peer support approach, so that more of the ways that people are relating within the mental health system and also in the community are based on some of the same values of peer support, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does, absolutely. So I'm sure that you've talked to a lot of different people about peer support within HRS, and I think peer support is so important. And I also feel that it's great to be amongst peers that have either been there or are experiencing similar things that you are.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's important. So that's great to hear that you're working with that. And and I always feel that people with mental illness are our best own advocates. We know what we need, and so I'm encouraged that we have a program where we can express that.
Yeah, totally. And like, I think, yeah, like that idea that you're kind of alluding to of people are the experts on their own lives.
Yeah.
And I think that's a powerful concept for a lot of people. It's not always the message that people are given.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's so many tools in our lives that I think that we learn to use ourselves, that by sharing them, not necessarily for everybody, but somebody might pick it up and say, well, maybe I'll try this too. So yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. There's nothing like having a mental illness and just feeling like you're all alone. You know what I mean?
Right.
This is what I found anyway. Feeling like you're all alone. Whereas when you're within a group of people that are your peers, it's just it's so much more to be able to share, and have friends.
Yeah, totally. It was really powerful for me. I don't actually identify as someone with a mental illness because I don't really buy into that construct. But it was very powerful to me, like at some points in my life, like the first time that I went to a conference that was like all other people who had also gotten diagnoses and like been in the hospital and stuff like that. It was like pretty life-changing, actually. Yeah. So it is a powerful thing for sure.
It is.
And so part of like the qualifications for when I'm hiring people to be peer support specialists at HCRS, one of the like main credentials, I guess, that I'm looking for is being able to, like, having some kind of experiences in your life that will help be able to relate to the people that we're supporting, and have like pretty specific kinds of empathy and like awareness of like oppression and marginalization, that's really strengthened by having experienced it firsthand. Yeah.
That's so important. I mean, for me, I've experienced so much in my life with hospitalizations and just so many tools that I'd learned. And I can remember being in a holistic hospital, and that was just the most wonderful thing that I ever experienced.
I've never heard of such a thing.
Yeah, well, that was in California. It was kind of like experimental. So what they did is they took people that had addiction issues plus suicidal tendencies and put them together and worked a real whole life experience, with the group therapy and the individual therapy and going out and doing things together, but also trying to challenge yourself to go over. I mean, like you've got the challenge, like I had agoraphobia, so you didn't want to go beyond that. So you found things that you would like to do that would make you, maybe encourage you go that far. And I can remember I read the book by Louise Hayes called How to Heal Your Life. And I just loved the book. And one of the counselors there came and told me about her being at a conference. He says, but you're going to have to get out and you're going to have to go in front of all these people. And because I wanted it so bad, I was able to do that. But that was the first experience that I had that I could.
Yeah, you felt empowered to take the risk.
Exactly. Yes, I felt like, because before you just feel boxed in, like, this is gonna be this way the rest of my life.
Right.
But then if you can, when I looked at it, it was like, yeah, I can. I just, I got to be aware of my surroundings, and yeah, it was great. It was a great experience for me. It was the first time that I saw that I could overcome ever.
Yeah.
And that's a challenge for a lot of people, is to really be able to see that you can challenge yourself to go over a comfort zone.
Yeah. To have enough hope to take the risks. And the risks are like so essential, because if you never like take a risk to do something new or put yourself out there, that's, how is anything going to change or evolve?
Yeah, and I think one of the things, that was concerning me for years was that the doctor says, okay, you can't. And then the teachers at the school say, you'll never learn. So that becomes a part of your reality.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Very much.
Yeah.
And so therefore, for me, it was kind of like feeling stuck, that was going to be my life from now on.
Yeah, totally.
And then to challenge that, I mean, to really challenge that. I was lucky enough to have somebody that asked me if I wanted to learn to read and write, and I'm like, teacher said I can't. And so they asked me 2 other times, and finally I said, yeah, okay. So they went out and purchased the Hooked on Phonics program for me. And I've always been afraid of people. One of the things they said is, now you got to go ask the volunteers to help you learn. And it was just that it was so powerful for me, because here's these people saying, no, you can't, you never will. And then here's these people say you can if you try. And so that's what I did. And I can imagine that might be what peer support specialists are good at, is maybe helping people feel comfortable enough to go beyond their comfort zone.
Yeah, totally. I think that does happen. And part of the way that happens is really being curious about what kind of messages people have received and have internalized about themselves.
Exactly.
So my story is similar to yours, in that I was told, starting at a pretty young age, like, there's something really wrong with you, you're limited, you're deficient, you're sick, really, like who you are is sick. And that like just became such a core message and story in my life. And it, of course, was self-fulfilling. Like if you believe you can't do something, you can't do it, right? So yeah, having conversations with people about, what they've been told about themselves and about the world, and not necessarily, I think it's a delicate balance about like, we don't want to just like say, no, you're wrong, let me tell you the truth or whatever. But really sharing sharing stories is a powerful way to do that. Like even just being able to say like, I was told that too, and then, this and this happened, and I realized that maybe I wasn't as limited as I thought I was.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it is. I mean, I think the word mental health disability has a lot of, a lot of influence over you when you get that diagnosis. So,
Yes.
and I know for me, when I found out, it brought me into a great depression, and it was like, okay, this is going to be my life for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
Not challenging the idea that my life could be different at all.
Right.
But there's so many of people like me out there that they want to go beyond and want to challenge themselves. They just need a vessel to do that.
Yeah. For me personally, like part of that healing involved becoming pretty politicized about it. And like, I don't know, one of the most life-changing, I guess, pivotal points that happened for me a number of years ago was I went to a conference and heard someone explain like why the diagnoses that I had been given really weren't about anything being wrong with me, but were really about a value system that some profession had turned into a diagnosis, and therefore really didn't mean anything bad about me. My whole perspective on my life shifted from a story of like, there's something so wrong with me to there's something so wrong with this world that I was born into.
Yeah.
And that's much more empowering, because now I feel like rather than spending all my energy trying to correct myself or change myself, I can spend energy trying to change the world in a positive way. And that's feels so much better to me.
Really does, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and one of the things that's one of the things I learned from Louise Hayes was, you've got yourself curled up in this ball that, of self-hate and feeling alone and all of this. So one of the things that book does is challenge you, like the first thing you have to do is to be able to look in the mirror and say you love yourself. Now, it took me a period of like 5 days to say it, and then once you say it, it's supposed to be a constant over and over.
Yeah.
And the idea is that it'll rub off on you and you'll start believing it. And that's something that's worked for me in many things in my life, is to challenge the thought, change the thought. So positive thinking, positive affirmations was big for me, because I got diagnosed with borderline, but little did I know that there is recovery from that. You can find it, and even though, and it's not a cure or anything, because you still have your struggles in your life. You still go through periods of bad days or whatever. But I like the idea when there's other people that are going through or have gone through the similar things, because I can learn so much. And that's what Walking Through Life's all about too, is to educate us, and not only us, but the society, so that maybe we can break down some walls of stigma.
Yeah.
Because I remember somebody telling me when I told them that I had a mental illness, don't say that too loudly,
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a scary, scary thing, and I think the way we break it is by saying, no, it's nothing wrong with having a diagnosis or even, it just means that you work to find out what works for you. What's your coping skills?
Right,
What will
right.
help?
Yeah, totally. I think the stigma is like hugely, hugely oppressive.
Yeah.
And for me, I have I guess I see many of the approaches to reducing stigma as counter-effective, actually. And so in my own life, what breaking down my own internal stigma has been about is saying I guess it was kind of a progression from I am mentally ill to I have a mental illness to then one step further from that, rejecting the whole concept of mental illness and saying maybe, with the example of borderline, I might think, borderline just isn't even a real thing that can apply to me or something like that. That's been the most liberatory approach for myself.
So thinking
around that
about
stuff.
it in a different way.
Yeah, like saying that's not even valid. Like I reject that diagnosis altogether because the way I am is not sick. It's actually I'm doing the best that I can to cope with the tools that I have.
I think the only reason why I like a diagnosis too is because I can get a reference from it.
Yeah,
You know,
totally.
like I can ask questions about it,
Right.
and then from that I can form my own opinion.
Mm-hmm.
It
Yes,
doesn't mean
yes.
that they're correct.
Right.
It doesn't mean any of that. But if there's tools in that diagnosis, like there's oftentimes books that people write, autobiographies,
Yes.
how they got better, and
Yep.
things like that. That's what I look for.
Yeah, that's a great point because then it's like a shared language.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, with some limitations, of course, because sometimes what I might mean when I say depression or being depressed might look different than what you say when you're depressed. But yeah, it's a point of like connection around shared experience and potentially leading to some different resources. I think many people though when they receive a diagnosis don't have that kind of perspective that you have.
Exactly. Yeah.
They take
yeah,
it so
yeah.
literally,
Yeah.
right? And then I think that can lead to harm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, because I can remember that. I can remember, getting the diagnosis and first looking at the computer and seeing all these family members saying getting away, and manipulating, and it's
Oh,
like,
yeah.
wow, am I that bad,
Yeah, that's so violent.
Yeah, it was, and it's so yeah, absolutely, and that and maybe that we can talk about that. How does peer support specialists support people that have chronic mental illness or feel that they've been labeled wrong, or
Yeah.
how do they get through that emotion when they have been given one and they don't know anything at all what to do, and the depression that comes from that and all that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I'll start by saying that people just have such a wide range of thoughts and feelings about diagnosis, right? And they're all really valid. And I think we really don't want to like invalidate or shut down any of those. So on one end of the spectrum, we sometimes hear from people saying, I am mentally ill, I am schizophrenic, I am, whatever, and this is like a core part of my identity and it's really important to me, and don't challenge it. And in that case, that's the language that they prefer, and we respect that, and also may ask questions about like, what is it about that is helpful to you, and like, how did you come to know that about yourself, and things like that. And and it also doesn't mean that when I'm talking to that person, I change my story about myself and say, oh yeah, I'm schizophrenic too, or,
Right,
or
right.
whatever, because I'm
Yeah.
not going to be someone who I'm not, right?
Right.
I'm still going to stay myself and not hide that. And then, there are people who are questioning and not sure what they think about these things. And I think that's more a conversation about like, what have you been taught about this? What
Yeah.
other options do you know about?
Yeah.
I think a lot of people don't know that, like I didn't know for a long time that there was even the possibility of saying, I reject that and that doesn't apply to me. Like I didn't know anyone was doing that. I didn't know that was an option.
Yeah.
So, I think it's exposing people to different options so that they can make the choice that fits best for them.
Right.
And then there are people who are really angry about having been diagnosed and really reject it. And we just support them in that. And sometimes that means helping other people in their support network understand their perspective and why they might be feeling that way. Yeah.
Do you ever run into like family members that don't understand, and they definitely get angry when somebody that is does have a diagnosis isn't able to do what they feel they should be able to do? So I think educating family is very important. Is that something that peer support services would help with?
Sometimes. I mean, we really do what people ask us to do within what we feel like we can do.
Right.
So, that most often happens if someone said like, hey, I'm having a really hard time in my relationship with this family member, would you join a meeting with us? Or
Oh, yeah.
like, could they talk to you? Something like that. So that's the kind of situation in which we're most likely to do that. We
I
don't
think
like,
that's real helpful.
yeah, we don't have conversations behind people's backs.
No, no.
If at all it's avoidable, which almost always it is. But yeah, I think that, yeah, I mean, that stuff is relevant all the time. Being a family member is really hard when someone you love is going through things that are hard to understand and often scary.
Yeah, it's scary
and,
for you as a family member.
Yeah, totally. So, you know, I feel empathy about that. And often fear turns into a desire to control.
Yep.
And so I think the balance is like validating the fear and providing support for the experience of the family member, while at the same time making sure that the main person that you're supporting gets to have their life and make their own choices, and the dignity of being able to take risks.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about what is the training like for a peer support specialist?
That's a great question. The main training framework that we use is intentional peer support. And that's kind of a framework for inviting and talking about mutual relationships. It's not necessarily specific to like anything mental health related, but really applies to relationships across the board. And it's based on the principles of moving from a helper-helpee relationship to learning together, from focusing on the individual to focusing on the relationship.
Nice.
And from being fear-based to being hope-based, and you know, seeing possibility rather than like, you know, trying to control and avoid all risk. I think it's a really excellent training. I'm actually this year beginning to train other people at HCRS in this approach, and not just peer support staff, which I think is really great. But when I hire someone, either they already have that training or they get it when they come to us. That's the main one. And then there's additional ones like the Hearing Voices approach.
Yes, I took that.
Yep,
I took that.
great. Yeah,
I took
it's really
peer
good, right?
support hotline too.
Oh, okay.
Warmline.
Awesome.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, when it was that, I don't know what it is now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Which I
Yeah,
believe
like
they're doing
alternatives to
again. They're doing
suicide.
that Warmline training now, aren't they?
I don't know.
I think they are.
Huh.
I think that's what I heard anyway. But
Yeah.
I think from taking that and taking the Hearing Voices one, I think it really opened my eyes to be able to see that you know, it doesn't have to necessarily be a therapist or a case manager that can help us. It's
Yeah.
often,
Totally.
yeah.
I mean, I remember being in college and I was having like a lot of really intense, difficult experiences. And a friend of mine said to me, you know, I don't feel like I'm qualified, like I have the credentials to be your friend or to talk to you.
Yeah, I've
Like,
had that said to me too.
Yeah, like we have this cultural belief that like
it has to be
emotions are
Yeah.
so medicalized, right? Like you have to be a professional to be able to hear about someone's experience or
Right.
respond in a supportive way. And I'm not sure that I
No, I don't either.
agree with that.
No, not
So,
at all.
yeah.
Because, you know, anybody can be a friend, you know, it's,
Yeah.
yeah, and I feel like when we do segregate people and say, well, I'm not qualified, or you really need to see a doctor, or
Right.
whatever, we're disconnecting them.
Yes, right.
That's what
Or
I feel.
othering, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because I've had
Yeah.
that done to me, and it wasn't very nice. But I was able to finally communicate the fact that I just need a friend. I
Right,
just need somebody
right,
to talk
right,
to. You know, I
right.
don't, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think.
And not that not that the expertise of doctors or psychologists or whatever isn't valuable, because
Right.
clearly it is, but it's not everything.
Right.
And it's not the main thing really that people need.
Right, and I look at it as it's an extension of what you know, I mean, peer support's an extension of, you know, like seeing the psychiatrist or seeing your therapist or seeing your case manager. So it's really about, I think peer support can be very helpful, helping people understand that they can have friends and, you know, they can do this, you know, and I think,
Yeah.
you know, for me, for many years, it was like I wasn't I didn't feel like anybody could be my friend because they wouldn't understand me. So I think taking that challenge, going one and saying, hey, well, for me, and I don't know, I think it's a thing for borderlines, often asking for attention is extremely hard, extremely hard. So that's when I would internalize and burn and cut and do all this damage, and people wouldn't understand. So again, they would say, okay, you need professional help, And so I think I had to learn how to be able to express that I just needed a friend. I just need somebody to talk to, and that I know me well enough if I'm not feeling well to go get help. So and I know people are scared to talk to people because they don't know if they're saying the right thing.
Right.
you
Right.
know.
Yeah. There's so much fear of messing up.
Yeah, so much, but
Yeah.
you can't mess it up.
Well, you probably
friend's a-
can, but like
Right,
if you're
but
just being
a friend,
kind,
yeah,
it's not
yeah,
very.
being a friend.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know what I'd do if I didn't have my friends to hang out with now.
Yeah, I mean that's just pretty much a basic need for most people.
Yeah,
if
and
not
I
all.
think I learned over the years is to be right up front with some of the problems that I did have with, so they knew, and so they know up front, because oftentimes I used to hide and not tell anybody anything, and I found acceptance, I found love. I can just now pick up the phone and say, hey, I need to talk. Somebody comes over, the whole 9 yards. So, and then in turn, I can also be a friend and do the same for them.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. That reciprocity and mutuality.
Yeah, it makes you feel better.
It's
Yeah.
really powerful.
Yeah.
It's really powerful. It's really such a huge part of my wellness in my life right now. Like, I'm involved in a mutual support network in Brattleboro, and it's really, I feel very supported, and I also feel inspired and like I have a meaningful contribution to give. And it's like this little circle that goes around and around, and it's lovely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that means a lot, And everybody, I think everybody finds something that, for me, when I first started finding things that worked for me, it kind of like, wow, that was exciting. Now, what's the next thing? What can I do next?
Yeah.
It's kind of like it's like
A snowball.
Yeah, exactly. Like, what's next?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
one of my things that I had said one time, because I had a fear of people looking at me when I was walking down the road. So I said, okay, well, what can I do about that? So I figured, well, they're having a bad day. Maybe they think you smile. So I figured when I went out, anybody that I saw, I would give them a smile and say, hey, nice day, And it was just a wonderful feeling to be able to do that. Just smile, hey, have a wonderful day, or whatever. It made me feel good, and I got that back, It's nice to do nice things like that. We want to talk a little bit about, if we could, a little bit about coping skills. What's some of the things that that people tend to want to turn to when they talk about coping skills? Is it like activities, what they would do, like drawing or writing or meditating, or?
Like people in general, you mean?
Yeah, I mean, everybody needs to find their own, but how
Yeah.
do they, and I think peer support's this too, this is what's worked for me, maybe it won't work for you, but it's kind of the idea of what, and obviously everybody's got their own idea of what works for them.
Yeah. Yeah, and we never want to assume that like what works for me is going to work
Right,
for you, right?
exactly.
Yeah, it's hard to say because it's so broad and so varied. I do think though that a lot of like what people often talk about as like healthy coping skills or self-care or whatever are not like are good, but often not really what I need when I'm in extreme distress. So like, I so often if I'm talking to someone about having a hard time, and it's kind of cliche, but like hearing a response of like, oh, why don't you take a walk, or have some tea, or a bubble bath, and it's like, no, you don't understand. Like, it's so beyond that. And so I'm really interested in reframing some of the things that are considered bad or dangerous as coping skills as well, that are really valid. Maybe this is a weird thing to talk about in this setting, but I had a really powerful experience one time when I was totally freaking out, thought I might go to the hospital or something, or like, overdose or do something extreme. And instead, I was like driving somewhere in the middle of the night, and I pulled over at a lake and I went skinny dipping.
Yeah,
in,
yeah,
in
yeah,
like a
yeah.
thunderstorm.
There you go.
And it was like, it was so
It
powerful
was, yeah.
because I got out of the water and I was like, I can figure out creative ways to take care of
Yeah.
myself. And I can just like ask myself, what do you need in there?
Yeah.
And then do that thing, even if it's bizarre
Right.
or you know, risky. I can weigh the risks against, you know, how I'm
Right.
feeling. And yeah.
What do you think about asking friends and family for what you need? I know that's hard for a lot of people. Like, you know,
Yeah, it
I
is.
don't need you to lecture me. You know, I just need, you know, like my biggest thing was I wasn't able to ask somebody to just sit and listen, you know?
that is
And
hard.
so that's one of the hard things I think for people is to understand that they can ask for what they want
Yeah.
and even ask for it before something happens if they really need that.
Yeah.
So people know exactly what, you know,
Yeah.
what they
Yeah.
can do or what you need, the attention, the listening, or whatever it is.
Yeah. Yeah, asking for what you need is such a beautiful thing and becomes a lot easier, I think, when other people around you are doing it and
Yep.
modeling it also.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I feel lucky in my life I have like friends and people I'm around who regularly ask for what they need and say when they can't give something and you know, talk about boundaries and stuff like that in a really open way, and it makes me feel much more like I can do that. And so yeah, that's great. Asking for what you need should be like something that we practice so much more regularly and like teach to children more than we do. And
Yeah, because you shouldn't be afraid to ask for it or feel like you shouldn't ask for it.
right,
You know.
right,
I mean, for an example, I can tell you about last night when Ted's great. He knows everything. We're watching this boxing thing, and I said, "Hey, Teddy Bear wants to learn how to box." He went in the room, picked up my teddy bear, and brought it out to me. See, he knows little things like that makes me happy, you know. So it's great, you know. I really enjoy that part of being able to express, you know. So I want to feel like a kid for a little while. Do you mind, you know,
Right.
stuff like that. Yeah.
right.
So it's kind of fun. And I understand that you also work with the, is it Life Enrichment Center?
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure.
What is that?
So that's it's a center that is open 3 days a week from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. in Springfield at the HCRS building there. And it's only open right now to people who are part of the HCRS community, so people who receive services at HCRS or work there and are over 18. And it's a place for life-enriching conversations, activities, and community. So really anything can happen there pretty much. We have pretty minimal, you know, like it's not like part of people's treatment plan. It's people are encouraged to use the space in a way that meets their needs and, you know, the needs of the people around them. But we do have a number of groups that are pretty cool. Like we have a hearing voices and unusual beliefs and thoughts group after the Hearing Voices Network model, and a peer support group, an independent living support group, and a few others. And sometimes just like fun activities like this month, I think we're doing some tie-dye. Yeah, so that's kind of like a little program or project that is part of peer support services as a whole, but it's just like one part of it. It's not the whole thing.
Do you think that maybe, I realize it's in Springfield now, that maybe eventually we could get them at HRS communities around the state of Vermont? Kind of like the Turn Point model that had one, and then after, I don't know, three years or so, they decided to open another one, and it just kind of rolled the ball.
Yeah.
It's something that I'm interested in. I would love to see it more.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's hard to say right now, not knowing, but anything is possible. And also, you know, going back to this mutual support network in Brattleboro that I mentioned, it's called the Hive Mutual Support Network, which can be found online if people want to look at it. But it's a pretty cool thing in that it's really grassroots. It's just members of the community who got together and said like, hey, we want to have this kind of thing. Let's just make it
Yes.
happen.
Yeah.
So I guess what I would say is for this area, there are many ways to getting there. And one of them is just like find a few others who are interested and, start meeting in, some public space or in someone's home once a week or once a month or something like that. Do
Great
a
idea.
potluck and then, build it from there.
Great idea.
It's actually doable, I
Yeah.
think.
Well, it's been in my head. I just think it would be wonderful since I
Yeah.
heard about the
Yeah.
Life Enrichment Center they have in Springfield.
Yeah, and my team and I are happy to help support that process.
Wow.
Yeah,
That'd
we
be
can't
great.
like necessarily just do it all and make it all happen because we just can't.
You need somebody.
But we would totally support that kind of thing because part of the goal, like we want to be doing peer support ourselves, but a bigger goal than that even is like increasing the capacity in the community for people to offer that to each other. Like that's really what's sustainable and inspiring.
Well, I know Hartford's been very. I mean, they've come across several things. Not only the Turning Point, but like they have a Junction for Teen Center. And They have the cartoon studio down here where people go and learn how to do cartoons. They have Main Street Museum, which is this great museum that
I
does all
just
kinds
went
of
to
things.
that the other day. Yeah.
Did you? That's wonderful. So I can see
Something.
Hartford just supporting something like this. I really
Yeah,
can, because believe me, the people in the community are great here.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Very cool. And then maybe sometime like we'll have, well, actually, I do host, this is not connected to HCRS, just in my personal life, a potluck once a year that's like a statewide, Mad in Vermont, like get together. So maybe even there's something like regionally for like southeastern Vermont.
Yeah.
That folks from Brattleboro, Hartford, and Springfield could all
Yeah, that would
get
be
together
great.
for. Yeah,
Boy, great ideas. Boy, I'm so glad I had you as a guest. I'm getting like
I
all
know
this
it just like
information.
snowballs sometimes.
I know.
Also, there's a Mad Pride March happening in July in Montpelier at the end of Creative Maladjustment Week, which is basically a week-long celebration of Mad Pride. So that's something to be thinking about also.
Yeah, you can
coming
give
up.
me all that information. That would be great. Maybe
Yeah.
we could go down to the camera and check it out.
Yeah, yeah.
So anyway, I do know that we're getting ready to end the show, but I'm so encouraged about what we've talked about. I mean, that was nice to talk about, some successes and, stuff like that. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, me too.
And I would love to have you come back and maybe do
Cool.
more. We'll philosophize about other things, I think
That's
it'd be
my favorite
great.
thing.
Yeah, let's do that.
Cool. Thank
So,
you.
But I am going to put a thing at the end of the show where people can contact you and
Yes.
contact your center and find out more about
Yep.
it. I will put that at the end. So anyway, I didn't know if you had like a quick message to maybe people in the community you'd like them to know.
About peer support services?
Yeah, great.
Yeah, let me think about that. Should like sharing my contact information?
No,
Or-
I'm going to put that on. But kind of like what you would like to see from the community to support peer supports. Or giving hope to
Yeah.
others that may be thinking about taking peer support.
Yeah, I guess what I would like to say about that is that really anyone can do can be involved in like mutual support or mutual aid, and I think that that is like a essential and core part of what it means to be a human in community. And so I don't know. I don't have a message. I don't
No,
have
that was a
message
great.
ready.
That is a message. That's what I mean by a message. I
Okay.
think it was. I think it was great. You're inviting people to get involved. So it's
Yeah.
kind of.
Well, and I guess what I'll say about it is that mutual support, like collaborating together as neighbors or community members to meet our shared needs, is a like powerful and political and subversive thing to do, because it's like reclaiming our ability and right to do that, and kind of going against this idea that we talked about that has been harmful of like only a certain kind of credentialed person can offer meaningful support to someone who's having a difficult time. Yeah.
I really like that message, and I do want to invite people, if they have any questions, to send them to me through Walking to Life TV show, or I'm going to put her information at the end of the show, so you could contact her with any questions at all that you have. So anyway, I want to thank you very much for being here today.
Thank you.
I hope you come back soon.
Totally.
We had a great time anyway. So anyway, this is Linda Carbonell saying goodbye for Walking Through Life today. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Walking through this life of mine, well, it's teaching me so many things, like how to love and how to lose and how